Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned to the MC Lars podcast. It is Monday, February 24th. The Baby Yoda 2020 campaign trail is winding down. Columbus tomorrow, and then Rochester, and then we head back home. So thank you everyone who came to see Schaefer the Dark Lord, the Double Clicks, and myself. It's been a great tour. It was awesome. This week, I'm talking to Gaby Alter, who plays in a solo project called Yes Gabriel. And we learned on this podcast, we were both born in the same hospital, Alta Bates in Berkeley, and we learned we were both C-section babies. So we maybe were C-sectioned by the same doctor. That's crazy. That never happens. This week's podcast is brought to you by Lisette Reimer, Luke, and Nick Harris, the new Patreon Larsons. And shout out to the old ones, Simon Rogers, Peter Valentine, and Jay Starr. Thank you all for your support. For only $4 a month, you could become an MC Lars Patreon Larson. That means you get 2 brand new songs a month that you can't hear anywhere else. And you get access to my entire back catalog, which includes rarities and demos and stuff you probably have not heard. Patreon.com/MC Lars. Check that out. But before you do, check out my interview with Yes Gabriel. And we're going to end with one of his songs from his album, Fall Asleep, which is a beautiful song. So here we go. This is my interview with Gaby Alter. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Gaby Alter, aka Yes Gabriel, in his beautiful apartment. What's up?
What's up?
We met through MC Frontalot, and you worked with him on a lot of music, and we did one tour together, I think in 2007.
We did.
And I think we became friends that tour.
We did.
That's what's up. How are you doing?
I remember you. I don't know.
You could tell any stories.
No, I just remember like going to that gas station. I can't remember the name of it, but you were like, let's rap about this gas station.
Sinclair. And then we wrote a song about it.
We did.
A demo. It's actually not bad. We did over the I Got 5 on it beat, so I guess we didn't really write it, but
still. It was like a mixtape.
Yeah. And I remember I was eating so bad back then, and you talk about how I'd get all these gas station burritos and then fall asleep.
Yeah.
Like I was such
totally
teenager on that tour.
That's hilarious.
And touring is exhausting, and especially when you're like it's not your project specifically, like when you're part of someone's band.
It's true.
At that level, you really have to have known them for your whole life and like owe them favors or something.
Well, not exactly. I wasn't like doing Damien a favor. I think I was, it was exciting. Certainly the first tour was really exciting. But yeah.
You did grueling. 2 tours?
I did 3.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just hard because like after a while, people on tour get a little bit, like you gotta be a road warrior to last in that world. And I'm not that much of a road warrior.
Well, and and also some people are conditioned for it and some people aren't.
That's right.
And do you still play on his records or not so much? Do you collaborate? Yeah.
I do. I really like that part. And we didn't, he did a bunch of that album, I think, sort of by himself.
The newest one?
Yeah, the newest one. Was it Net Split?
Yeah.
Net Split, he did a lot by himself. But also me and Dave Chung, who's in Canada.
Is that Bad Spella?
Bad Spell, yeah, sorry. And I apologize, Dave, if I mispronounced your last name. But anyway, he's in Canada, but I love doing stuff with like him and Damien because like Dave is crazy talented. I don't really understand how to make hip hop beats, and he just does it.
But you know how to do chords and notes, and you're a true musician, and that's a different thing. Everyone has a different skill set, and
I'm a true pianist, I'd say. Dave is really an incredible musician, and Damien is too. But I think being a production is being a different kind of musician.
That's the interesting thing about hip hop is that it's the distillation of taste and good moments and the rhythm and a concept. And then once that is like the foundation, then you can start building like the tresses and all that flourishes, which makes a good song great, you know? And I think that like, that's what's cool about his records is they're musical.
Yeah, that's right.
They're not just like canned beats, you know?
No, and he labors so hard over each detail. And, and Spella also really, it's just, he's got some really magical I don't know what. It's sort of like he makes the programming alive, and that's really hard to do.
And then when you add bandmates and a documentary and all that flavor.
Yeah.
But so that's Damien Hess, aka Frontalot. So I want to know, I want to talk about your specific journey. Sure. And now that we've got that out of the way, I want to talk about, you grew up in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I grew up in Berkeley.
And I was born in Berkeley and grew up in Oakland too.
Right.
But
that's right.
But so we have similar frame of references, and now we're both on the East Coast.
Yep.
But tell me more about your life and growing up and your memories.
That's a wide swath.
That could be the whole episode.
That's right. Well, I was born in Alta Bates Hospital.
Me too.
You too? For real?
But different years.
Yeah. You're a lot younger than I am.
But that's kind of cool. So you have any memories of being born?
Yeah. I remember a white light. No, I don't remember being born. I mean, I bet I was C-sectioned. I remember.
Me too.
Really?
Maybe the same doctor sliced.
Maybe.
Slice. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe. Who knows?
Or whatever.
It's totally possible. Yeah, I mean, I grew up, I have really good memories of Berkeley, because remember, it was always sunny. It wasn't always sunny, but I have a lot of memories of it being sunny and kind of nice weather.
Beautiful trees.
Beautiful trees. We had I was really fortunate. We had a backyard. We were renting our house for the first 8 years, but it was a nice house with a backyard. And what else? Well, music. I realized, I was thinking about this morning, that we had these neighbors who were still are friends of my parents, the Websters, and their son, Michael. They had 2 daughters and a son, and Michael was this kind of prodigy. And he writes operas. He's really, he writes contemporary music, and anyway. So when I was 6 or 7, I don't know why, maybe my parents set it up, but I went over to see Michael, and he explained to me, he was here are the chords that most of pop music is composed of. And he showed me the 1, the 4, and the 5.
Uh-huh.
Which you know about that, right?
Right.
It's whatever, CFG.
Louis.
Yeah, Louis, exactly.
Yeah.
And he was that's most of pop music. And then he's jazz is 2-5-1. And he showed me what that was. And that stuck with me for the rest of my life. It's weirdly, that's the basis of my understanding of all music.
And you were how old?
And I was 6 or 7. So it's probably 7.
Wow.
Maybe I was 8. Maybe it already started lessons at that point.
I mean, and that's the benefit of living in an interesting place where people have thoughtful kids who talk about that stuff instead of just whatever kids talk about. I'm sure you also talked about cartoons and superheroes, but to have a connection with someone you look up to share that with you, that's proprietary secret information.
Exactly.
And you understood it.
I guess I did. Yeah. Cause then here's the thing. Then ever after that, I mean, I really looked up to Michael, so that stuck in my head. And then I would listen to music and try to figure out what the chord changes were. And that really is the basis of my being a songwriter.
And were you then playing any instruments, or when did you start playing piano then?
I started messing around on the piano, I think, when I was 7, maybe 6. I think my parents I don't know if they bought me, but they bought a piano, and then I would be messing around on it. And I'd figure out, that musical Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat?
Oh, yeah.
You love it, right? It's
go,
great.
Go, go, Joseph. Yeah. You know what they say.
Sha-na-na, Joseph, you'll make it someday. It's so good. And especially for that age, I think it's perfect. For that.
Yeah.
It just fit with my brain chemistry.
Is that Andrew Lloyd Webber?
Yeah, it's Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice.
That's tight.
It's tight. And then, so I was I would sit at the piano and I'd plunk out the melodies. That was my first, sort of foray into that. And then my mom was so Gaby, you have to take an instrument. And I was oh yeah. And she's would you like to take the piano? It seems like you're interested in the piano. And I was I guess. And I wasn't that into it. I wasn't into taking lessons, but then she made me take the lessons. That's how it felt, that she was making me take. She was pressuring me. So I took the lessons. They weren't terrible, but somehow they didn't feel totally my choice. Mm-hmm. But which is weird because I obviously like messing around the piano. I was really interested in that. So she did me a favor, I think. But there was sort of this feeling of
what instrument?
A begrudgment. But then I got into it. What instrument?
Which one would you have rather have played? Or you just weren't trying to play music?
I just wasn't thinking. You know what I mean? I wasn't thinking about how do I organize my life. That's not how I thought as a kid. I was just my life is just the way it is. You know what I mean? There's school. I wasn't one of these super, I mean, I had independent thoughts, but it wasn't about I'm going to learn an instrument. That's not how it went for me.
So you were really nurtured, and shout out to your mom for that.
Yeah, totally.
Were your parents musical?
My mom's rad. They are in different ways. Like my mom, I think played piano growing up. And I think that was part of why and her dad played violin. So she wanted, it was an important value. She wanted to give it to me. My dad doesn't play an instrument and he doesn't listen to music that much either. He's like a words person, but he totally has a good, like he sings well. Like when he's Jewish, we're Jewish. And when he's singing like a prayer, like he's like sings strongly.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, there was some precedent, but it wasn't like we were like a super musical family.
But it was there.
Yeah. There's some there.
And your brother.
Yeah. My brother's really musical. My older brother.
Oh, you have an older brother?
Yeah. Older half brother. Technically he's half brother, but I just call him my brother. But yeah, he is really musical. And when I was 5, he was like 7 years older. He came to visit us and he had a guitar. And that was really magical. I was like, oh, what is that? Like, that's amazing. And he was into the guitar. And then, of course, he gave me basically all of his musical taste. Like, when I got old enough, he was he was the one who was like, he had, what's it called? Around the World in a Day, like the Prince album. And then I became obsessed with it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool older brother to have.
Oh, yeah. It was the best.
And then Misha is your little brother?
Yes.
And he's artistic and aesthetically minded too.
He is. He's the visual one, much more so. I thought I was the visual one because I used to do comics when I was a kid, like you.
You did comics?
Yeah, I did.
That's what's up.
Yeah, but then I gave up. But anyway, I didn't keep going like you did. But Misha really got into that. And the thing is, of course, Misha is he musical? Well, he
likes new rap music.
He likes new rap music. He has a good ear for it. I mean, I heard some coming out of his room yesterday, and I was like, yep. Misha's really on it. Like, I don't know what's going on now, but he does.
Yeah, rap is taking a whole new weird direction, and and there's so much good stuff constantly. It's just very unorthodox and short. The songs are a minute and a half.
Interesting.
And I think that's a reflection of like the Instagram video limits back in the day. Because what's that? Marshall McLuhan, The Medium is the message. Mm-hmm. Everything, especially with rap, is defined by the technological elements that predate it and then get like hacked for their use. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so I guess that ties into the idea that music appreciation is very circumstantial, and the way it survives and transmutes, it's like an organic thing. It's like a virus. You know what I mean? It's music can't exist in space and without any context because, well, first of all, there's no air molecules in space, so you can't hear it. But you know what I mean?
Good point.
You have to have people around you who make you love music and encourage you. And I think that was what was so cool about 2006, 2007, linking up with you and all your friends, is that my exposure to music was all like kind of older music industry people who were very looking at music from more monetary, major, like the label stuff. And then I met your crew, your cadre. Right. And it was like, oh, these are people who are kind of existing outside of that and doing well. And that's interesting to know that your musical roots go that early in your life.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think that my older brother, he really influenced me. Like, I remember sometime when I was a teenager, he gave me like cassettes, because this is how old I am. And when I had my bar mitzvah, so I was 13, he gave me like 4 or 5 cassettes. It was really interesting. It was like the White Album, Neil Young's Harvest. So the first, not Harvest Moon, that hadn't come out yet. And what was the other one? Cat Stevens' Footsteps in the Dark, volumes 1 and 2. It was like the greatest hits of Cat Stevens. And there was like another one. But I remember like, at first I liked the White Album a lot. Like, no, I think it took me a little while because the White Album is a weird album. You know what I mean? Do you ever listen to that? Yeah. It's kind of dark and weird. But it was like I graduated. Like each year I would like suddenly realize how amazing the album was, and it would relate to my experience. Wow. It was crazy. So that I didn't really get to Harvest or Footsteps in the Dark until the end of high school. And then all of a sudden it was like, Neil Young has this song, which actually I don't know if it's on Harvest, but it's called Sugar Mountain. Yeah. It's like, you know that song? Yeah. And it's so it's like eerie, and it's eerily about leaving childhood. It's like you can't be 20 on Sugar Mountain. Yeah, yeah. Right? It's like basically going back to like when you were a kid at the carnival, but like he's like, you can't be 20. Oh no, he's saying basically like, if I go into my escapist world of fantasy, I'm not 20, but I am in reality 20. It's that feeling when you're 20 and you're like, man, I'm old now. you know, which is hilarious from my vantage point now. But anyway, but you are old compared to like being a kid, which is when you were at the like white hot nucleus of life.
Right.
So,
that's poetic.
Yeah.
That music that you're exposed to, on Sugar Mountain, that music stays with you forever. I had found this Neil Young. It's called like the Live Rust album. It's like a live record.
Yeah.
I remember I got it at like a church rummage sale for like $1, and I listened to that so much because I like how one half of it is him with the guitar, and then the rest is with Crazy Horse, his band.
Yeah.
And Neil Young. And then I realized I was a huge Nirvana fan. I still am. How he was such an influence on Cobain and all that. What was your feeling? So you would have been in high school or middle school when grunge happened? Like 91, where were you? Middle school?
No, I was in high school.
So were you a fan of like alternative rock and flannel and all that? Or were you kind of more outside of that?
I was more outside of that. Although I remember when that stuff happened, I remember first thinking Pearl Jam was like dumb, even though I think I did like, I think I like Jeremy. Like that song. But you know, and like, but I remember then, Nirvana, it took me a little while, but I was like, there's something like, you know, they're sort of grittier than Pearl Jam. They're not nasty, but they're just, you know what I mean?
More
like,
visceral.
Yeah, more visceral. Yeah. And I think that ultimately I did respond to that. I was like, I get it. Like, it's all about like, cause I already liked some punk music, you know, I'd heard some Black Flag, and you probably into them, right?
Yeah,
that was like an early influence, but like Black Flag and like I got punk, and then, so I got Nirvana, like just that, like, you know, here we are now. Like that's like, but
it was melodic. That was,
it was melodic. That's right. That was the difference.
Yeah.
And I love that because I pretty much needed melody. Except for Fugazi. No, but they had that one, sitting in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Like that's a good melody.
Yeah, it's good.
Why? Because I can't get up.
I sampled that, and Ian MacKay let me use it for free.
Really?
Because it was for a independent thing. So I just emailed him.
Really?
And so he said you can use that. So shout out to him.
Those guys are amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Like they really are what they are. They're not like fake punks. They're like punks.
They talk about community and existing, outside of the mechanism of the industry, right?
Yeah.
That's tight.
That's amazing. Okay. But so in answer to your question, like at the time, the things I was mainly into were, I did like some of that, and Nirvana, I definitely appreciated them. I was really into Public Enemy. And I was really into Tribe Called Quest, and I was really into, interesting, a lot of rap. And then I was really into, Prince I'd been into for a while, but there was somebody else that year, like who was big. But yeah, I wasn't like a grunge person. That is, and I felt like it was kind of overblown, to be honest with you. I mean, no disrespect to the grunge people, but obviously some disrespect because I'm saying I didn't like it.
Well, it was like when
like Stone Temple Pilots, I just couldn't get on board.
Yeah, there was a lot of emulation of these hits, right?
Yeah,
and because they were making so much money. I mean, it was what happens with trends. It's like what happened after Blink-182. All the emo bands and pop punk bands, it became a whole stereotype of itself. The counterculture becomes mainstream, right?
Yeah.
But
that's right.
The difference is, I guess, after that, after Nirvana happened, popular music could have that grittiness in a way that it really didn't before.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And good thing, there were a lot of good things. I mean, even that song, like, Hello, Mom, was like Tracy, The Burdens of Being Upright, you know, woman Tracy, somebody. Bonham. Yeah, Tracy Bonham.
Mother.
Yeah, actually, we know somebody that works with her.
That's right.
You know that guy, right? John, he's in the band that knows Wheatus.
Cornmo?
No, John, it's like he and his partner are a band.
Late Cambrian.
Yeah, Late Cambrian. Like he like produced her album or something.
That's dope.
But anyway, she's like whatever that song was, like Hello Mother, Hello Father, like that's super musical, that song. And she's a violinist, but like that also came out of the grunge thing. Like I'm helpless, I'm losing my mind. Which that comes out of the Pixies, right? The Pixies apparently were why Nirvana did the loud soft thing. Right. They just took it from the Pixies.
Right.
Which is cool.
And they
Pixies were great.
They made sure to shout them out and be like this, like Kurt always said, Smells Like Teen Spirit is intentionally a Pixies tribute.
Oh, cool.
He said that.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. Like, good music is going to beget more good music.
That's kind of cool. So, and that's the thing we're always chasing as songwriters is to create those timeless nuggets that will be covered by people, remembered, and define like moments of our life. And it's bigger than music. A great song transcends time, right? Theoretically, yeah.
I mean, I wonder about that a lot. I think it does in some ways. Yeah. I think because Because like with my album, which I spent a long time on, it was kind of coming to that realization. It's like, I want to make something that I think, like, I won't just think it's good today. I'll think it's good in a year or in 10 years. And I don't know if I've succeeded or not, but I think I at least partly did.
So when did your record come out?
It came out last year.
And so how do you feel listening to it a year later?
It's interesting. I haven't given it a full listen a year later. I did listen to it kind of recently, and I was like, I felt embarrassed about the vocals in some spots. So I'm not sure now if like, it's hard because I was also, you get this weird thing, right, where you're assessing the commercial viability of what you're doing. And by commercial viability, it's sort of like, what does a person who doesn't know me and doesn't care about me think when they hear this? And so I had a moment where I just felt really insecure. I was like, well, if I were a better singer, but I think, like the reality is like, I'm a good singer for what I'm doing, and I got good takes. Like that was a hard thing to realize, like how to get a good take. And often it was the first or second take. Like that was it.
Yeah.
That's when you have the magic.
Right.
And then afterwards, it's like you're trying to create thing and people can hear that. So I guess ultimately, I think I feel pretty happy with it. And then there's some things I like, I guess I would change that, but mostly I'm happy.
We were listening to some of the songs earlier, and I noticed you have very good tone and pitch. And that's something that you were saying, like some people naturally have it super well.
Yeah.
But some people don't have it at all. And we're called rappers. Hey. No, I'm kidding. The whole thing now with rappers, they are all now really good singers.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, and also a lot of them sing through autotune, so who even knows? Right? Like, is Drake a good singer? I never know because he's always got the autotune or whatever it's called on.
Yeah. I think he's probably a good singer without the autotune. If he were with like a guitarist and they just did something, would be probably good.
Probably, yeah. I mean, the dude's had a while also to like probably get better.
Yeah. He kind of typified that and popularized that singing rap style post 2009, where you have to sing as well as you rap.
Yeah, which is cool. I like that that's come back in, and how like Frank Ocean, who's he's not a rapper, right? He's a singer, but he's sort of like then embraced the other side of that. The other side of that equation. It's like now he kind of like uses a lot of the rap rhythms, but he's singing.
Yeah,
it's cool.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the record and the process in deciding you wanted to start this project.
Well, I'd always worked with other people, like I worked with Damien with MC Frontalot on all of his records, and he was like the lead guy. So I would kind of contribute. I'd be the contributor. And then I have this whole career writing musicals where I'm like part of a team. And sometimes the team is bigger. Like I had a team where there were 4 people and 3 songwriters. I was like one of the songwriters. And then a lot of them, it's been me and like, and a playwright. But a lot of the times the playwright writes the lyrics with me. But even if that doesn't happen, it still feels like I'm beholden to this larger story. So I kind of just was like, and a lot of times I would record them and I'd be like, this didn't turn out the way I wanted it. I didn't really feel like I could totally stand behind the tonal quality or the production. So I finally was like, I just want to make something where it's like me. I'm in charge. I have to do everything, and I have to figure out how to make this sound like me. And the occasion for it turned out, I had this breakup, which had, I guess at the time, like all this significance to me that it took like a number of years to kind of work through to work through it.
It was therapy for you.
Yeah, it was.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I guess. I mean, it sort of feels like, well,
I'm sorry about that.
Thanks. No, you don't have to be sorry. I don't feel bad about it anymore. Yeah. But it's like, it was some really long emotional process I was working through, using the relationship, I think, as a kind of like way into that. And so that was sort of like, this is what I have to say, and it's going to be this very personal statement. And so I made it a very personal statement.
And it was your statement.
Exactly. It was my statement. It wasn't a collaborative statement. And I'm really a collaborator, I think, at heart. I love collaborating. Like I'm writing these kids songs now. It's super fun to get assignments. Like I like that kind of thing. Nagin Farsad, who I work with a lot, have worked with a lot. She, I love her. She'll be like, hey, Gaby, I need some, I wrote some songs I wrote the soundtrack to her movie, Third Street Blackout. And so it was like all about like, I want this vibe. I want that vibe. I love creating vibes.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, what is it that I want to say? And I think that it sort of was like, oh, I'm stepping out as an artist in a different way now.
That's like cool.
Yeah. Which, is something that you've always done. Like you're always, it's like, I'm Lars, I'm doing the Lars thing. I mean, I know you're not like doing like these sad songs about your breakup, but like
I've done those though.
You have though. Yeah, I'm sure you have.
To make a personal statement is, I think it's so important. And I think the thing that bolsters it and allows it to be a strong statement is when you take away commercial concern. And when you're able to surround yourself with other things that are keeping your business together, so you're not poisoned by that, like that whole thing when you're doing it. Because like all the best songs and songwriters, they wrote those songs in moments of like just emotion, giving into the emotion, not giving into the QuickBooks Excel sheets. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think, the other thing is like previous generations of artists and particularly musicians had this luxury of not having to deal with the spreadsheets.
If they were lucky to be signed.
Yeah, if they were lucky to be signed. But I mean, here's what I'm thinking about. Like some of my favorite artists, certainly growing up, like the Beatles and Prince. For some reason, those ones keep always coming back to me because I think I liked how they always wrote in a bunch of different styles. Like Beck is like that now. Have you heard Beck's new album?
Yeah, was it Hyper?
Yeah, Space.
Hyperspace. It's awesome.
It's awesome, right? And it's sick because Beck is always, he's like Bowie. He just morphs through styles and they never feel fake. It always feels like, oh, it's like a Beck joint, but Beck is now like absorbed like those weird like no wave sort of retro synth 80s people.
Yeah.
Like he just ate them, but now it sounds like him or like, anyway, so that's really interesting. And then the Beatles did exactly that, right? Like the Beatles and Prince, they were both just like, there's sort of like animals that like would like absorb and then spit out like this sort of, Prince would just be like, oh, I want to do new wave. And then he did 1999. Which was like this weird like funk jam, but like electronic thing.
Yeah.
That no one had ever, that people like, what? And then he did, and then he absorbed the Beatles and he did Around the World in a Day, which is like a crazy psychedelic, but it totally sounds like Prince. Like, it's just like, you can't say that sounds the Beatles, it's just like, so anyway, point being, I think that what's interesting to me is like, I think you're right. I think there's some zone where it's like, we're just trying to please like the inner you. But the Beatles were like on a 6-month schedule to produce albums. So they had a lot of commercial, but somehow they were able to stay in touch with what they were doing while doing these commercial things.
And I guess until Brian Epstein died, that's when they're kind of, the mechanism of the business fell apart and the Apple, I was going to say the Apple store, but their Apple headquarters or whatever, they were giving too much money away to friends. And that was kind of the beginning of the end. That's what I've read.
Interesting.
And so,
but also I suppose in a weird way, they stopped having commercial concerns at a certain point, right? Like in a sense, they were just like, well, we're still contracted to write these albums, but also they were just aware, like they didn't need money anymore that much.
Yeah.
They were just like, we're doing our thing. We're like the artist that everyone's paying attention to. And then they did Sgt. Pepper and they did all these crazy, like amazing things.
And the experimental stuff is why they're so canonized.
Correct. Yeah.
People go both ways on this artist, and he just dropped a surprise album today. And by the time this airs, it will have been a few weeks ago, but Eminem, he's absorbed and morphed with like what hip hop has done. And I think, not everything's great. And his first few records are definitely like his best, but I think he's still awesome. And the way he stays current with rap and works with the new artists, I think that's cool. I like him a lot.
Yeah. He seems great. I should say seems because I just haven't been that up close. I did listen to his last album and I was like the one where it was like sort of a angry Eminem album.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I was like, yeah, he's still, he's just so good at what he's doing.
He can rap.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, all right.
Were you ever into Dylan?
Not a huge amount. Although I have to say certain Dylan songs, when I've heard other people, like my brother sing them, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's like a monster lyricist. It's not just lyric. It's like the lyrics, like in folk songs where like the lyrics and the song, like the lyrics are most important, but the music supports it. And he writes good melodies. It's just, he's amazing, but his sound is not a sound I've ever been attracted to.
Yeah.
Like I'm more into pop music, sadly.
Yeah. That's interesting. All his, probably the most famous versions of his songs are covers, like Hendrix Watchtower.
Oh yeah.
Maybe not. He's got some classics.
Yeah. I mean, like a Rolling Stone, people know that.
That's true.
From him going, yeah, the damn, he woos the wild.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. He's amazing. I think I'm just missing some of the, like, there's some way I couldn't quite get into that sound where he's like, actually, now that I think of it though, he has beautiful early songs like Bucket of Rain, Bucket of Tears, Bucket of Wind coming out of my ears, Bucket of Moonbeams in my hand. Like that stuff is really cool. And you're like, oh, that's where like all of indie music, all of indie folk came from that, basically that.
Oh man, that's, like an iconic Well, speaking of genre emulation, like the Nashville Skyline record and like the way he did rock, it's so that brings me to my next question.
Yeah.
Will the next Gabriel record, do you think you're going to go in a new musical direction, or do you like kind of the vibe you got on the first one?
I think what was interesting about that project, if I do another Yes Gabriel thing, because right now I've kind of swung my attention back to A, musicals, and B, like writing these songs for a South Korean English teaching company, which, I mean, anyway, like basically like I've moved back into my collaborator thing because it's more what I'm used to and what I'm comfortable with. But if I do a Yes Gabriel thing, what I realized listening to the Beck is like, but also like with that album itself, I kind of realized I didn't have a template. Like I was figuring out the template as I went. So it's kind of like I probably will have to figure it out as I do it. And my guess is it's not going to be exactly the same because I already did that.
And the thing is, you can't. The bass player from Limp Bizkit said this, and I'll never forget this. Wes Borland. Yeah. I think he's a bass player.
From Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, I saw this in the Guitar magazine. He said, no, and it's always stuck with me. He said,
okay,
you can't know aesthetically what something's going to sound like before you start, because if you do, your vision is limited from the onset. And I remember I wrote that in my journal. True, and I was like, that's such a good quote. You can't know what something's going to sound like because then the fun is taken out of it. There was this quote at the end of yoga every morning. They do an inspirational quote, and someone, and I forget who this is attributed to. We could Google it. They said, if I communicate to you what my dancing means, why am I even dancing in the first place?
Whoa.
So, yeah, you don't know. You can't know unless you're doing something specifically like in a genre to reference it. You don't know what it's going to sound like.
Yeah, and one thing I found doing this album was like I was really used to doing different genres, right? Like I feel very comfortable. What I'm doing now with these kids songs is like it'll be like, okay, it's a song about going on a vacation. So I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to do this as a bossa nova because it's like, sunny and
yeah,
it's like the thing that the easy go-to is actually in some situations that's correct. But then making my own album, I was like, the problem is that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear something that feels true. And that means it's going to be something that's not exactly like what someone did, which is hard. That's really hard work. You know what I mean? It's so easy to make something that sounds like something that's been done. Not something that sounds like, but it's like, just even to nudge it over a little bit is a huge difference. And you have to pay attention to that kind of detail in order to nudge it that way. That's right. What I think. That's what I learned.
Plus, going back to your early musical memory, it's only so many chords. And especially in a certain genre, that's even more limited.
That's right. It's limited chords, and how you limit the chords and like all that stuff, and like what the voicing is and what instrument. It's so important.
Yeah.
Like with a lot of these songs I did so there are 5 songs. It's an EP actually, it's not a full album, but I did like, at least with one song, I think there were like 3 different versions, maybe 4, and they were really different. It was like electronic. I did an electronic version of one. I just couldn't find a thing that felt totally right. And then my friend, Ben, was like, slow it down. Like I'm always playing everything too fast. And he was like, slow it down to 120 BPM. And I did. And then he was like, drop the key like by like a major third. Because I've been singing it like really at the top of my range. He was like, just drop it. So suddenly it became this really haunting ballad. And that like, it didn't totally solve the song, but it basically created the basis for this totally other vibe that then is way better than anything I had ever done before.
Tempo is important as well as instrumentation.
Absolutely.
Super important.
Everything is important. That's what's freaky.
Yeah. That's true.
But yeah, no, you're right though. Tempo, instrumentation is incredibly important. There's so many, but it's like, you kind of like, you have to start somewhere and build on that thing. What I find is you build on thing, and if it doesn't work, you start over and you build on something else.
Yeah. I remember when my first managers had this great songwriting advice. Like if a song you're working on it and it's just not coming together, it's like sometimes you're trying to save a friend from a battlefield who's so badly hurt that if you take them to triage, you're not going to survive. So sometimes you just have to leave them there and then start a new song.
That's
That's important.
I like that. Between that and the Limp Bizkit quote, I think we've got a lot going.
We got a lot of metaphors.
Yeah.
So where'd you go to college?
I went to Wesleyan.
And what'd you major in?
By the way, I went to Wesleyan with Damien, with MC Frontalot.
Yeah.
Before he was MC Frontalot. I majored in something called College of Letters, which is an interdisciplinary humanities degree.
That's what's up. So what were your disciplines you fused?
Did everyone just fall asleep?
No, everyone's, I think a lot,
Everyone who's listening to you is like, yeah, we also have interdisciplinary humanities.
No, but everyone, this podcast is a lot about defending the humanities and people who are making a living who did not major in engineering or computer science, which is tight. If you want equity and security, go for it.
Yeah. And also if you have that kind of mind, I mean, shit,
if you're brilliant enough.
I wish. Yeah. If you're brilliant. But anyway, what were you saying?
So what were your disciplines you integrated? Music? Did you do music in college?
A little bit, but I didn't really study it that much. I mean, well, okay. So here's what happened. The disciplines were English, philosophy, and history. You could take courses in any of those departments to get credit, and then you had this what was called colloquia, which were like a seminar format class every semester that you had with all the other majors in that major of your year. So it'd be, and we would discuss certain periods. So we started off with you probably did something similar at Stanford, right? It was like Plato and right.
They call it IHUM, Introduction to Humanities.
Yeah, Introduction to Humanities.
Yeah.
So that was like all of my whole major was Introduction to Humanities.
So that's cool, man. So you have a wide understanding of this, like of a lot of knowledge.
I suppose it's hard to say. I mean, maybe it was just more of an awareness of like, there's a lot of different like schools of thought. Yeah. I don't know how knowledgeable I am. It's like, I know what Descartes said, but everybody knows what Descartes said. I can't remember like the details now.
Well, what was his thing about? I think they're 4 a.m.
Yeah. It was like, I think they're 4 a.m. And that part I think revolutionized philosophy because the idea of like, like thought is like what makes, like it was sort of like proof of existence. But then he immediately went off in the wrong direction because he was like, I can philosophically show that God is what made me think, I think. Mm-hmm. And then people are like, later were like, you can't do that. Like at some point philosophy was like, we can't use God in philosophy. You have to like, that's a separate branch.
You can't use that as the answer to every question.
Well, not only that, but you can't prove the existence of God. Like that's not a provable thing because they're using logic and philosophy. And so that ultimately was like, became a different brand. That became theology. But there were people like Kierkegaard who were kind of these weird, like super Christian philosophers. You remember this? But Kierkegaard was sort of like, the knight of faith. He was all about faith. But the whole thing about faith is like, you can't prove it. Like that was his point. Descartes thought you could be both rational / logical and have a proof for religion at the same time. It was like, you can't do that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you know about Wittgenstein?
He thought everything was just a bunch of words.
Yeah.
Right?
That words defined our reality and everything other than that is not important.
Yeah, which I think is, I wouldn't go so far as to say dumb, but I'm like, I think what the problem is that led us down the terrible postmodern rabbit hole that now it's hard to climb out of. Well, I think we're climbing out of it really fast because of like the reality of watching people lie a lot in public. I mean, they were doing it before, but now it's just like, everyone's like, but not everyone, excuse me, like 52% of the people are like, but these are a bunch of lies. And then everyone else is like, no, but it's because they're watching like a disinformation channel, or they're watching channels of information that are way more distorted than the other ones that have like a certain amount of distortion.
David Foster Wallace loved Wittgenstein, and that's what I've been learning about him because last year I read Infinite Jest and did a bunch of songs about it for Patreon.
Amazing,
and that was an exhausting but rewarding, like odyssey. Finishing that book, but
are you going to read Ulysses next? You're just going to tackle all the like.
I do want to do Ulysses, Gravity's Rainbow.
Oh damn, dude!
That's what's up.
I can't read Foster. I love David Foster Wallace's essays, and he's amazing. But I can't read his fiction because he was so depressed, and I feel like when you read his fiction, it's too depressing.
I mean, his characters are all a piece of him. I did a great podcast with this guy in Kentucky who wrote like the definitive Infinite Jest guide. And we talked about, he kind of explained the book in terms of the plot because it's a very hard to understand book. But once you get the plot, everything kind of falls together. Okay. But this idea with Wittgenstein that like words allow you to, create this sophistry of making arguments and really getting away from reality. And the whole premise of Infinite Jest is you watch this video, you get sucked into this machine and you get away from reality. That's like the plot device. These terrorists try to use it to Canada and America are one. So they try to send it to America, to all the high powered people to make as a form of terrorism. So Canada will separate again. Mm-hmm. So the metaphor that reading the book is like that because it's just this assault of words into your mind. And it's like, he tried to prove Wittgenstein with that book that the burden of proof was on, like, if you're able to absorb this book, you can realize that like words are so all encompassing, like this book, that will consume your life. And it did mine life for a few months for sure.
Wow.
I'm still talking about a year later.
Yeah. I mean, I love David Foster Wallace's essays. You know, the one about where he goes to the porn convention?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
It's amazing.
It's dark.
It's really dark. But I feel like the saving grace of the essays are that they're so funny. Like it feels like he's the smartest guy, the smartest teacher / older brother you've ever met.
Yeah.
But he's not talking down to you.
No.
He's explaining, and you're like, you're so much smarter than me, but you're breaking it down for me. Like I feel like he's just like, and but so. You know, I say, and but so.
Yeah, that's true. That's
I love
really
that.
true. And that his eye was such that he would do like review a cruise ship or review a porn convention. He did a great book called Signifying Rappers with this guy, Mark Costello.
Okay.
That he did right before he started his master's or his PhD when he was living in Boston.
Yeah.
And it's a great, I think, late 80s critical history of the origins of rap and where it's going. And it predicts a lot. And it talks a lot about the social stratification that rap tries to mask. It's great. It's a great book. Signifying Rappers. That was my introduction to him. And a friend of mine in college was like, you should read this. And then he died like 4 or 5 years later, but I didn't know about his other work. And then I was like, oh, anyway.
Yeah.
I recommend that book.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Musical theater.
Musical theater.
So did any other
my dirty secret. Just kidding.
any other alumni from Wesleyan go well into musical theater?
Nah, I don't think so. I don't think anybody's had any success in that art form except for me from Wesleyan.
Do you know Lin-Manuel Miranda?
No. I mean, I met him.
Is he younger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's 5. He graduated 5 years after me.
Yeah.
I have 2 Lin-Manuel Miranda stories. I mean, you know, that guy's amazing, obviously. And also like I don't know how humble you can be, but like having made the greatest musical in the world or whatever, but he seems like he's doing pretty well in that, like better than a lot of people would do. But no, he actually, so here's the thing. I met him at my 10-year reunion. I was back there with Brandon. I think we were like playing at the you know, there's like a party at the reunion weekend for all the classes. And like I was in a cover band and we were going to play. Anyway, so I met him and I was like, oh, hey, like I knew a friend of his from Wesleyan because I had lived with this girl. She was my first roommate in New York. And we subletted this place. She was super nice, Sarah. She also worked in theater. So they were friends in theater at Wesleyan. And she was like, so I had seen In the Heights because it was just coming off Broadway that is now being made into a movie.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was his first Broadway show. And I was like, hey, Lin-Manuel, or Lin, I don't know what to call him. I was like, oh yeah, I was roommates with Sarah and like, congratulations. I saw your show. It was awesome. He's like, thanks, man. And again, seemed really like nice, cool, down to earth person, which I think he is. By all reports about him, he's awesome. Which is like, how can you be that talented and down to earth? Oh,
he must take after you.
No. But he. Anyway, those are my 2 stories. I think, that guy, you know, he deserves all the success he's gotten. And what's really cool is he really, you know, he did revolutionize musical theater, which I think had been stuck in a rut, you know, and it was very white. Still, unfortunately, very male, but that is changing a little bit. Actually, it's changing faster than, you know, and there's like the Alanis Morissette musical. There's Sarah Bareilles wrote a really good musical. But anyway, he, you know, he stepped in and he did In the Heights, which was all about, you know, being Latino and living in Washington Heights. And then he did Hamilton, which, speaking of being true to yourself, apparently he was just obsessed with it and thought, I heard him say, and hopefully this is true. He was like, I thought this musical, like I was really into it. First, I wanted to do a mixtape. Just want to do a mixtape, right? And he's like, but then I thought, you know, this would be really great for like middle schools and high schools because it's about history. Like he literally was like, I did not anticipate this reaction.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think that's just because he was just into what he was doing. And he put in the, you know, I mean, he's into everything he does. He's really obsessed with it. And you can tell he really cares. And it's like coming from the heart.
And talking about rappers who can also sing, right?
Yeah.
Like his skill
right.
set is expansive.
And act.
Yeah. And
it's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I mean, it just whatever. Some people, I think he works really hard and I think he's really gifted.
Yeah, that's true. I remember the first New York Times review of Hamilton was like talking about how it was cool. and it was speculating on, will this be successful? And I remember the last quote was, Broadway needs Hamilton more than Hamilton needs Broadway. Meaning it was this, and it was kind of like they had seen it on the first night, and no one knew it was going to become this phenomenon.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people in the industry, I spoke to one I remember before, and I was like, Hamilton is really great. This is before it was like a hit, and she was like, I don't know, a rap musical, like, and like that was like a lot of people were kind of like, rah, rah, yeah, about history. But there is an element of luck. You know, there's an element of the wind at your back, and I think like you and Damien had versions of that, right? Where I'm not to take away from what you guys did at all, but it's like you kind of recognized and were the right people to recognize something that was happening on the internet. Yeah. Like I just wasn't internet savvy, you know? And nor was I really equipped to take advantage of a lot of those things. And I wasn't the voice of the people who were on the internet. And you guys, I think, both kind of like
nerdy people.
Yeah, and really hardworking and brilliant people. And you stepped in, and there was that moment of like, oh yeah,
that's nice. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, you think about Hamilton. You know, it's nerdcore in that it's a nerdy history rap musical. And
totally.
Yeah. I mean, you've done how many musicals now? 5?
More than that. I think I've done.
Wow.
I think I've worked on 7 or 8, and then I'm now working on like one new one, and I'm hoping another one. Yeah, so something like that. But yeah, I mean, I started working with my friend Dominic Ma. We did them after high school and at this small theater under a pizza place in Berkeley called Laval's, and then Laval Subterranean. And then we did that like a bunch during college, and then I did one with Damien after college.
What was that one called?
Young Zombies in Love, which is now available on Bandcamp and I think maybe Spotify.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Did you re-record it or is the original tapes?
Well, no, it's the original because we spent 1.5 years making that album. That was our first proper album.
Oh, so it's well produced.
Yeah, it is well produced. I mean, you know, there are things that I would change now and it would blah, blah, blah. But yeah, like we worked on it a lot.
Is it, how would you, like, if someone were just listen to that, how would you describe the genre of that?
I mean, it's kind of like eclectic pop.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of like, there's sort of a country-ish song. There's although it sort of sounds like Led Zeppelin doing country or something.
Yeah.
There's like a kind of a drum and bassy. It's like, there's a Damien found some sample.
Yeah.
Some loop.
That's the Amen break. You know that break beat,
Oh,
right?
is it? Is it the Amen break?
I mean, the one you just did.
Oh, then it probably is. Yeah. Anyway, don't tell anyone. But, and then, yeah, we did, it was a lot of different genres. That was the kind of stuff I did back then, was just like, you know, a real array of genres. I like working different
I think that
styles.
This would have been the early 2000s.
Yeah. Well, we did the album, I think in like 99, 2000.
That was like the DJ Shadow era, like just pastiche, all the mashups. That was like,
there was a lot of pastiche. We were into pastiche. Yeah. That's good. Thank you.
Because you were some urban postmodern kids coming back to the Bay Area, where the internet was fostering creativity and brilliance.
Exactly. But
that's what's up.
But then I moved to New York and then I entered, Tisch has a graduate program for musical theater writing. So I learned all of like not all of, but some of the more traditional ways of thinking about.
Did you do your master's?
Yeah, I did my master's.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
At Tisch.
Yeah. At Tisch, yeah. Which is still, you know, great. Like lots of great people come out of there or go there. But anyway, they're like talk a lot about drama and like, how does this serve the story? Before I was just like, well, this is a fun song. It's cool. And I'm in charge and no one is telling me no.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of critique and I was like, oh, that's what you get with MFAs. You get a lot of critique and all of a sudden you're like doubting yourself. You're like, what did I do? Oh, wait, maybe I don't understand everything. I thought I understood everything.
I wonder if
I thought I was the golden child, but now I'm like.
Do you think it made you a better artist or a more like concerned artist?
Both. Yeah. I mean, I think it made me, a lot more like second guessing. But in some ways I had to, you know, it's like, if you want to become truly, I know some people don't go through that, but I just realized, well, here's another thing I realized, because I don't know that I'd ever done this consciously. I had a class with this guy, William Finn, or Bill Finn, we call him, who is a really, like he has this Broadway musical called Falsetto Land, which is about a version of him, like, coming out as gay. And it was big, like very revolutionary at the time because it married the idea of like sort of like the singer-songwriter, like talking about yourself with musicals, and not in the way of like Joni Mitchell or something, but he kind of took that idea and it changed things because it was like he was writing from himself, from this very personal place. So in his class, he would be like, he'd want you to write from yourself. And he was scary because he would just tell you what he thought and not in a nice way. Sometimes he might be different now because this was a long time ago, but so you'd come in with something. Sometimes he'd be like, I don't get it, and you'd be like, oh, okay.
You're like
he'd call you on it. He'd be like, you're not being real. So I started writing things because I was scared and I had to show people stuff in him. And he would be like, write about your Thanksgiving, like write a song about what you did on Thanksgiving. He's just like, tell it like it happened. So I did. And like, I think up to date, that was like one of my best songs. Cause it was really, there was something real. It was almost something like I didn't control it. I did control it, but it was something that was about the real experience. Cause that was the assignment. And then I wrote a song Deep in February, which was also about like a heartbreak. Cause he was like, write a song about February. So I just was like, okay. And I try not to, it's sort of where you're trying to put on a hat. I wasn't trying to put on a hat.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, that goes back to this idea that if you're from the heart, if you're really interested in doing it, it comes out better. Hamilton's an example of that.
I mean, of course, and that guy worked so hard on those rhymes, but he's gifted rhymer as well, but it did absolutely come out of his, he's great heart and great intellect at the same time. That's what's amazing about Hamilton. It's like, damn, this guy's really interested in U.S. history. And it has that moment where, you've seen it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to spoil plot, where they're dealing with the death of the son.
Right.
It's that moment. That's like a really sad, touching moment in the middle of like this hurricane of history and energy, and then it can be touching too. And I think I mentioned that because the best songwriters can reflect the gamut of human emotions. Of course, some artists are better at sad songs and some are better at funny songs, but being able to do all different genres and all different emotions is hard.
It is hard. I mean, I don't think it's not like any of us. I don't know. A few of us can do like all genres, but I think like for him, what's cool about Hamilton is you can really hear. Like that guy he loves two things. He loves a lot of things, but he loves musical theater. Like he really loves like musical theater, like real musical theater, not like he would write to Sondheim and stuff, Stephen Sondheim.
Yeah.
But he also loved rap when he was a teenager, and you can hear all the Biggie and the Eminem, and he specifically like tracked characters to be like he was like, so-and-so's Busta Rhymes. Like he talks about that. So he absorbed those people's rap styles, and then he could sort of twist it and put it into a story, which I think is what I try to do too. What we all try to do, but without, I don't really do the rap thing. But he was being very true to what he loved and his influences. Yeah,
the fluency of that's interesting. So going back to your bar mitzvah cassettes, being like, this is the Neil Young character, this is the Prince character, channeling them. I'm sure that's.
Yeah, it's interesting. Can I talk for a minute about a current project?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so currently I'm working on this musical which is set in East Germany in the 1970s, right? So it's under communist rule, and so the project is to do songs that sound like they were written in the 60s and 70s. Oh, cool. Right? So that is what I'm now. So I'm like, okay, like for one character, I was like, who's like she's like a woman, right? Uh-huh. And she's kind of like trying to get this guy to like come join like the rebels who listen to rock and roll, because you're not supposed to listen to rock and roll. Right. So her song, I was like, who's like an analog in the 70s, right? And I thought about it and I was like, Joni Mitchell, but I was like, no, that's too like Flowers in the Hair. I mean,
Janis
not later.
Joplin?
Just could be, but I was like, that's not right either, because it's not.
Patti Smith.
That was one possibility.
I'll let you answer. I'll quit interrupting.
But anyway, it came down ultimately to Stevie Nicks.
Oh.
But partly because of the moment, because of the dramatic moment, she's sort of seducing, not like seriously seducing this guy, but there is a certain sexual element, sort of romantic, like, don't you want to know what's on the other side? But I also wanted...
Is that the name of the song?
No, actually, there's another song called The Other Side.
Oh, yeah.
But it's different. But this one is like, it's about her kind of like, it's like beckoning him, but into this like sort of mysterious world of like where rock and roll kind of like bridges you into this other world that's like free.
Yeah.
So I was like, Stevie Nicks.
I got chills for a moment.
Yeah, right.
Because I can imagine her and that archetype fitting into the story.
Yeah. But so I'm really using specific artists on that project, because I'm like T-Rex, like I use T-Rex a bunch because the producer suggested it, and also because like I don't know, like doing Bowie is it's really hard to do Bowie and not just have it sound like a Bowie pastiche. Some people, actually, I know a guy who's really talented who does do that. But for me, I'm like, I don't quite know how to get into Bowie in the right way.
And which Bowie? I guess 70s
Yeah, and
Bowie.
which Bowie? Yeah, 70s Bowie.
Yeah.
Because he's got, where he's sort of like glittery, but like it for the right project. But I feel like this project is like not quite right for the glittery Bowie. And I also listened a bunch to the Berlin Trilogy. He has a trilogy of albums called the Berlin Trilogy. And like, I was like, I can't quite, I don't know.
It's too on the nose, maybe.
Maybe,
because it's when you think of Berlin and the 70s, you think of him and Iggy Pop riding the trains and heroin.
And heroin, yeah. But the thing is, for me, it's like, it's also, there's something about me that I can't quite adapt it internally.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That you're not going to force it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I might just be afraid, and like if you were like, I'm gonna hold a gun to your head, make a Bowie track, I would probably be able to do it, and maybe I'd be like, oh my God, why didn't I do this before? But who knows?
That's cool, man. That you have this fluency in all this genres, and you're doing South Korean kids songs, solo records, musicals.
Yeah,
I'm always inspired and encouraged by your breadth of skills, and
Thanks,
you're humble. You don't brag about it.
Well, I guess I don't.
No,
I gotta get better at self-promotion, because the thing is, when I do try to self-promote, sometimes I think I'm too arrogant. So it's like, I don't know, how do you do it? You have a good line there.
Thanks. I mean, I just try to keep I try to not take myself seriously and have all my stuff is a little tongue in cheek, but then when I do that, I can then drop serious messages. So I try to just make sure everything I promote, I do it in a way that feels like I'm excited about the Avengers, so that's why I wrote a song about it, or you know what I mean?
Right.
That it's like, but it's so annoying, and no one wants to read tweets about new records. And I mean, I think I don't know. I mean,
hard, right?
I was going to say one of the most effective thing is word of mouth, and like if certain people you trust or certain podcasts you listen to.
Right.
So as we wrap up, I wanted to talk about the Yes Gabriel project, and I wanted you to promote it here.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, if you can find it on Spotify and all the other places, Apple Music, etc. It's called Yes Gabriel, and the album is Yes Gabriel. It's 5 songs. If you like, you mentioned this, and somebody else I know did too. Sea Change. It's a little bit like the Beck Sea Change / what's the other one that's Morning?
Oh, Morning Phase.
Yeah, Morning Phase.
Yeah.
A little bit like those albums. I didn't quite intend that, but it's because it's a like breakup album, basically. What else? If you're going for breakup, you might like it. Nick Drake. It sounds a little like Nick Drake. Yeah. And it's there for consuming. You can also buy it on Bandcamp for not very much money. And if you like it, let me know.
That's what's up. Where can people get a hold of you on social media?
I am on Twitter at Gaby Alter, GabyAlter. Same on Facebook. I think those things, and Instagram, they're all the same.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Keep it concise.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah. So let's introduce this song. You played it for me earlier. Remind me the name.
This one's called Fall Asleep.
And you played all the instruments except the string parts, right?
This one, I hired an upright bassist as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, which I guess is a string instrument too.
But you played the what's the main instrument?
Yeah.
The guitar? Or
yeah.
piano?
Yeah. You know what? Just kidding. No, I did play a lot of acoustic guitar on this album, but this was a track that my friend Sean McArdle played acoustic guitar on. We recorded this is what happened. We recorded it in his living room at the time. He now lives in Scotland. I think he teaches ethnomusicology. So we recorded it in his living room in Oakland, California. We he had these 2 guitars. They were both really good guitars. We recorded with some, like Audio-Technica mic.
Yeah.
And it totally, later, like I went back and I was like, it has a great vibe. And the parts, he came up with the parts, with my direction, but some of it was just his ideas. And the guitars sound beautiful. His playing sounds great. So I just built the track on that. Yeah. And I did like 1 or 2 vocal takes, and it turned out those vocal takes, again, there was this magic of like, I just was feeling it because it was early. I hadn't like lost the spirit.
Yeah.
And I just built it. I was like, you know what? The sound quality is not perfect, but it's good enough, especially for this kind of like very heartfelt, like personal indie thing. So, and then I recorded real strings in a studio in Brooklyn.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it was a true bi-coastal project, that
Exactly.
song especially. So
Yeah.
it's called Fall Asleep.
It's called Fall Asleep.
And this is from the Yes Gabriel EP. with Yes Gabriel. My guest, Gaby Alter, is a really cool guy, and I appreciate his friendship. And I appreciate coming to your apartment and getting to know you outside of your other projects, because you're a really great collaborator, but it's like cool to learn about how you've been blazing your own trail, man.
Thank you, Lars. And it's really nice to have this conversation. You're a good interviewer. You're very thoughtful, and like you're a very positive person. And I think it's cool that what you're doing with like your platform is to talk to other artists, and it's like it's a community. It's like towards strengthening a community of artists. And I think the last thing I would say is just we really need that. I mean, I think we've touched on like the record industry, but I think capitalism in general is not very pro-human, pro-survival, or pro-artist. Mm-hmm. So I think the more that we have, I mean, we're still trying to make a living. We still live in capitalism, but the more that we have like these conversations with each other, the more we get to know each other and support each other is like, that's great.
And it's how we can fight the totalitarian police state of the dystopian future by writing songs.
That'll definitely be one way.
That's what's up. So, yeah.
If there is a totalitarian.
Who knows?
We don't know.
Yeah, so, okay, well, that's a good note to end on. No, I was joking about it because I feel optimistic about the future. People are like, everything's so bad. Yeah, things are bad, but things are good.
Yeah, things are good now. Look, we're alive now. That's really good. The fact that we're alive, we have possibility right now, and that's what's really important. And we do have this window, of 10, 12 years, to fix the environment, to stop fossil fuels from destroying the planet. So I think that's exciting.
To have a leader who was not elected by a foreign power,
Sure.
I mean, that's what's up. So we don't want to just fall asleep. This is Fall Asleep by Yes Gabriel. Holler.
Nice.
No, but not to end on like a bad political note, but that's what's up.
I guess I'll see you around. Maybe the next time you come into town. It was nice just to spend some time with you. It's been a while since you came round. Do you still have my shirt? The one with faded letters that didn't quite fit. You used to wear it when we went to bed, and I watch you fall asleep in it. Oh, I'd watch you fall asleep. Oh, I'd watch you fall asleep. Guess it would be hard to find some way back to where we fell out of time. Sing the song I knew when I was with you, and remember how it rhymed. Guess I'll eventually forget the way I hated when you smelled like cigarettes. How you apologized and brushed your teeth so you could kiss me before we fell asleep. Oh, I'd watch you fall asleep. Oh, I'd watch you fall asleep. I'd watch you breathe. In your sleep, your walls down. Watch you breathe in and out, up and down, closer now than ever.
I guess I'll see you again. Maybe someday, I don't know when. And when I do, I won't recognize you as the person I knew then. You better catch your train. Take my umbrella in case it starts to rain. The way it did when we lay in bed and we fall asleep to it. Oh, and watch you fall asleep. Oh, and watch you fall asleep. Oh, and watch you fall asleep. Watch you fall asleep. Watch you fall asleep.
Beautiful song. Very sad song. Very personal. Thank you. Yes, Gabriel. That was awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, this week we have the MC Lars Patreon Larson of the week. We've got Rob, a.k.a. Rob Piccinini Jr., who was a podcast guest, but because he's such a good friend, he called in and left a message about the time we met. Check it out.
Hey everybody, what's up? This is Rob Piccinini Jr. I'm going to talk about the first time I met my good buddy, MC Lars. It was about 2007, and my friend John Schiffman auditioned to be your drummer for your first full band UK headlining tour. The guy that you had for bass dropped out like a month before the tour, and John recommended me for the gig, so I auditioned. I came all the way up to Park Slope, Brooklyn on a bus with my bass on my back. I show up. We rehearse for about an hour. Lars wants to go get Taco Bell, so we go down the block. He says to me, "Hey, Rob, that's your first name, right, Rob?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what if your last name was Banks?" And it was just like, but a little rim shot action. And from that moment forward, we've pretty much been the best of friends, telling really stupid dad jokes to each other all the time, and occasionally playing some shows together. Well, that's pretty much my story, and I'm sticking to it. Love you. Bye.
Thanks, Rob. Love you. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, we have an interview with my friend Zach Vitter, homie from Carmel Valley, who's been doing a lot of interesting things since we graduated high school. Check that out. Thank you, everyone, for coming to see us this tour. And thank you to the Patreon Larsons for making this episode possible. Hope you're all having a good week. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye. Oh, yeah, I want to give a plug for Rob's band, Red Hymns. They recently played a show with me in Philly. They're so good. Check them out. Bye.